Welcome back. So yesterday I did a video where I talked about the New York Rangers, the Buffalo Sabres, two teams that at this point I feel tire fire is a term that works. Buffalo, they've been losing nonstop now for years. This 11 game skid they've been in, just the latest. The Rangers, 3 wins and 14, just spiraling in the wrong direction. So the question of, well, why not include the Islanders? There's a simple reason I didn't include the Islanders. I don't see them as a tire fire. I see them as a team that has defied expectations for years, and right now they're kind of where they're expected to be. So they're 12, 14, and 7. We don't know how they're going to finish out the season. Last year at this point, they were 16, 8, and 9. So a lot of points in extra time. This is a feature with this team. They ended up finishing 39, 27, and 16 last year. They did qualify for the playoffs. They lost in the first round to Carolina. Took 5 games. So they made the playoffs last year, even though they only won 39 games. And they went out in the first round. The previous year, they were 18, 13, and 2 at this point. They ended up 42, 31, and 9. And they lost in the first round against Carolina that year, too. That year in 6 games. The previous season to that, 2021-2022, they started the season 14, 13, and 6. Not totally dissimilar from the record now. They ended up 37, 35, and 10, and they missed the playoffs in 2022. So, is it a huge shock this team is not above the playoff line at this point in the season? No. So their leading scorer is Anders Lee. 33 games, 13 goals, 12 assists, 25 points. Lee's a veteran with the Islanders. He's a good player. He's a good goal scorer. But he's not that explosive franchise-type player. And I don't know that the Islanders have a franchise-type player in terms of their skaters. Palmieri, 33 games, 11 goals, 13 assists, 24 points. Palmieri's been very good this year. Probably their most consistent threat offensively. Bo Horvat, their most snake bit, 32 games, 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points. Horvat should probably have about 4 more goals than he does, but like I said, he's been snake bit. But is Horvat a go-to number 1 offensive guy? No. And I know that with his $8.5 million cap hit, people look at that and go, well, he should do more. Horvat plays a leadership role. He's good on face-offs, but although his face-off numbers, it seems, have dropped in the last couple of years. Last time I looked, anyways. Nelson, 33 games, 10 goals, 10 assists, 20 points for Brock Nelson. And he's a good player. And that's the thing. There are a lot of good players with the New York Islanders. But that great player that you could say, man, when he's out there, he's beautiful to watch. And what a great player. They don't really have that. So they have to rely on scoring by committee. And this year, the scoring just hasn't quite been enough. Holmstrom, 33 games as well, 9 goals, 10 assists, 19 points. All of these players have played every game. The Islanders have been relatively healthy, although there have been some key injuries that we'll talk about. Siplikov is a rookie, 33 games, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points. But he's older for a rookie. I think he's 26. And so what you see is likely what you get with Siplikov. Just a little bit above a point every other game for him. And for the New York Islanders, he's not really been a key guy. He's been good, but at age 26, again, what you see is what you get. Dobson, 33 games, 4 goals, 14 assists, 18 points. He's been scoring better lately. He's their best scoring forward, or best scoring player. He's the defenseman, not a forward. Best scoring player during the month of December. Pajot, 31 games, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points. Pajot, pretty pricey contract for him, but he is more of a defensive forward at this point than anything else. The offense is still there, around a point every other game. So is he a go-to guy offensively? Not really. Pulick, all 33 games have been played by Pulick. 1 goal, 10 assists, 11 points. And then there's Chalowski, 23 games, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. He's jumped in with the injuries on the blue line. Now, Barzal could be that guy, but he hasn't been that guy to this point. Not this season. 12 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. So he's been dealing with injuries. And when you get Barzal back in the lineup, does that make the Islanders automatically a much more explosive team? Not really. It makes them better offensively. I think when Duclair returns, and he's still seen as day-to-day, he's only played 5 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. He looked good in the 5 games he played at the time he got injured. So if he can come back in and play like that, and if Barzal boosts their top 6, it definitely helps. But does that make him a playoff team? That's where the question comes in, right? And then goaltending. Sorokin, 9-10-4 record, 904 save percentage. Sorokin's an excellent goaltender. There's only so much he can do. Varlamov's 3-4 and 3.889 save percentage, currently on LTIR. So the goaltending's been good, but they're not getting goals anymore. So one thing to take into consideration is age. Players who are currently 30 years or older on this team, you got Lee, Palmieri, Pajot, Pulick, Mayfield, Pelech, Cizikas, Martin, Riley, and Varlamov. And so that's a lot. I didn't even include Högberg. Högberg, the number 3 goaltender, is 30 years of age. Now, they've given up the first goal in their last 8 games. So they're not starting on time. And when you're a team that doesn't score enough goals, that's a problem. They've been shut out 5 times this season. So when the Islanders get shut out, it's not really a surprise at this stage. That means they're on pace for over 10 shutouts against them this year. And that's not a formula for success. They're currently 5 points behind the number 2 wildcard spot occupied by Ottawa. They're also 4 points behind the Penguins. And there's other teams that are either tied with them. I think Philadelphia is 1 point ahead of them. So there's a lot of teams in their area. There's a lot of teams to jump past if they're going to get into and stay in a playoff spot. So getting into these numbers here, I wanted to look at from 2022 until this year how their scoring has progressed or regressed. So looking at the goals for, their best season of the 4 on the board is 2023-2024 when they scored 2.99 goals per game. They have not scored 3 goals per game. This year's 2.55 goals per game, easily the worst of the 4 years on the board. The year they missed the playoffs in 2021-2022, they had a 2.79 goals scored per game. Their goals against per game, currently 3.09. That's one of the worst numbers, although last season it was 3.15 altogether. So they managed to cobble together a good enough record that they got into the playoffs. And there was so much of a furor raised about the Capitals making it ahead of Detroit and how the Capitals got swept aside. People didn't pay as much attention to the fact that the Islanders had kind of a mediocre record as well, and they had a negative goal differential and still made the playoffs. Now, their best number on the board with goals against is 2022-2023 when they had 2.65 goals against per game. Their power play is an issue. 12.1%, that's the worst on the board. 2021-2022, when they missed the playoffs, their power play was 22.1%. And then their penalty kill is atrocious. Atrocious is the right word here. 64.3%. So their special teams are not helping them. And when you're only scoring 2.55 goals per game, you're not getting enough 5-on-5 either. So the New York Islanders are having their struggles. Now, that 64.3% on the penalty kill is even worse than last year where they were 71.5%. And there was plenty of concern last year about the penalty kill. So that's just got worse. The best number on the board is 2021-2022 when they had an 84.2%. So they missed the playoffs with that 37, 35, and 10 record, but their special teams were actually quite good. Shots per game, 28.2 this season. That's the lowest of any of the numbers on the board. Their shots against per game, oddly enough, also at their lowest, 28.6 shots against per game. So defensively, they're doing a good job of preventing a ton of shots. Last year, that number was 32.8 shots against per game. So I've talked about Sorokin and Varlamov and how they're giving them good goaltending. Sorokin's advanced stats have been excellent, but in the end, they're not. Something's gone wrong here when the team is only allowing 28.6 shots against per game. The goaltending's still been good, but the numbers are getting worse. Tells you that a lot of these shots may very well be of the high danger variety. So maybe they're allowing more shots from closer in than what they did last year. So it looked like a ton of shots against last year. That's something that can happen, right? Now their hits per 60 minutes have dropped. I'm not entirely surprised by that. Clutterbuck is no longer on the roster. So this year their hits per 60 minutes, 22.04. That is a substantial drop from last year's 24.83. And the hitting game was a big part of what made the Islanders successful in previous seasons. And so they don't quite have the hitting they did in previous years. Giveaways. Now, there's been talk about whether or not this number is being measured differently, but giveaways per 60, currently at 14.43. That's a substantial increase from last year's 8.21 giveaways per 60 minutes. So, something to keep an eye on is the fact that they're not tracking the puck very well, or they're just handing it off to the other team a little too easily. Now, one mention you get anytime you talk about the Islanders is Lou Lamoriello. Now, Lou Lamoriello in 2022 became the first octogenarian general manager in NHL history. And it makes sense that guys don't usually go into their 80s still wanting to run an NHL team. It's just, you have other things to do when you're in your 80s. But Lou Lamoriello is a competitor, and he loves what he does. Clearly, he's been doing this for decades. Now, he's been the general manager since May 22nd of 2018. And I think with the fact that the Islanders have overachieved at times, that lends itself to the idea that even though this team's underachieving right now, give it some time. It's Lou's team. Lou will figure it out, and they'll turn it around. And what's interesting is he won the Jim Gregory Award for GM of the Year in 2020 and 2021, while if you have been reading comments on the internet and just general opinions on the internet, there is a lot of disagreement on Lou Lamoriello's job as a general manager. Even the years he won GM of the Year, there was plenty of complaints. He signs older players. He doesn't upgrade the team. He signs contracts that are too long. He signs these guys to too high a cap hit. But when the success is there in the regular season, it is really difficult to justify making a change at general manager. And it doesn't sound like the team is all that interested in making a change. There will be a point where Lou Lamoriello is phased out as general manager. There's been speculation that maybe Patrick Roy is the next guy. I have no idea what's been promised and what hasn't. But they do have a couple of pending UFAs to keep an eye on if this team stays well below the playoff line. Does Brock Nelson become available? How popular a target might that be? How many teams right now are looking for a top 6 forward who can put the puck in the net? Nelson can do that. And Paul Mary is a pending UFA as well. And these are players who could be very beneficial to another team. They could really help another team out at this point in time. And maybe their time's coming up with the New York Islanders. I don't qualify this, though, as alarming or anything, because we knew that the New York Islanders were going to be in tough to make the playoffs this year, that they would need everything to fall in their direction, which at times it has over the last couple of years, and they're going to need to keep making sure that they're getting games past that 60 minutes. They're going to need to rack up those overtime and shootout loss points, and they're going to have to find a way to get some regulation wins and stay in the hunt. Can they do it? Yes. I think Patrick Roy is a good coach. I think there's a good team here. I don't know that it's a playoff team, but we've counted them down and out before, and we've been wrong. At the time Patrick Roy was hired, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not they were going to make it, and they did. So could Patrick Roy end up being out if this team is, flirting with being completely out of the hunt? Lou Lamoriello has never been shy about making a change behind the bench, so you never know. I don't think so. I think Patrick Roy's job is pretty secure. I think Lou's is as well. So while we have all of this discussion around the Rangers and the Sabres and who's going to go and who's going to stay and what's going to happen, the Islanders don't have that kind of noise surrounding them right now. It doesn't mean that there isn't something to be concerned about if you're an Islanders fan, but their upcoming schedule is interesting. So on Saturday, they're in Toronto. That's a big game right there. That's the Tavares game, right? Then they come back home. They play Buffalo on Monday. Buffalo, that's a winnable game. So there's the possibility that the Islanders get themselves up for a game in Toronto, because it's kind of impossible not to get yourself up for a Hockey Night in Canada game in Toronto on a Saturday. And then coming back home and playing Buffalo, I could see them winning the next couple of games, getting to 14, 14, and 7, and then all of a sudden being back in the hunt. Then they're at home on Saturday the 28th. So after Christmas, they're still at home. They're playing against Pittsburgh on the Saturday, and then they're in Pittsburgh the next night. So home and home with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, of course, right around that same line as the New York Islanders. Are they going to stay in the hunt? Are they not? And then they have a back-to-back against Toronto. A home and home, I should say, against Toronto, not a back-to-back. There's a day in between. On New Year's Eve, which is a Tuesday, they're in Toronto, and then they come home on Thursday, January 2nd, and play against Toronto again. So 3 of their next 6 games are against Toronto. That means Toronto could very well have a say in how much worse this could get, or if the Islanders can get some wins against Toronto, it could go the other way. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, because while I look at this roster and my brain says this is not going to be a playoff team. This is not a team that's going to have a really strong second half. They're They're going to end up falling short of the playoffs. We've said this too many times. So I can't say that with 100% confidence, but let me know your thoughts. Is this the year where the Islanders now don't make the playoffs and we look at some big changes? And let me know, if you're an Islanders fan, what kind of changes you want to see. Clearly, this team needs more goals. They need more goals, and I don't know if Patrick Waugh's coaching style is going to lead to more goals for the New York Islanders. It hasn't thus far, but the second half of the season could be a whole other beast. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.